Good morning and welcome to the Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and I'm joined with my colleagues, Justice Gordon from New York and Jeremy Coleman from Indiana. Robert Parker has the day off. All right, gentlemen, there's a lot going on in free agency. And I tell you, the free agency market is on fire right now. There is so many trades and deals that are being had. Some of them make sense for the most part. And then there are others that are just brain boggling. And you're sitting there wondering what the front office is really thinking about. So let's kick it over to you, Justice. What are some of the free agency moves that, kind of got your attention?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me was the Kansas City Chiefs releasing their top two tackles in Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. We all saw the Super Bowl this past year. They're down both of those tackles in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is running for his life, has no time. They're a big play team. They need time in the pocket for plays to develop, and he did not have that, and that's one of the major reasons why they lost. And one of the first decisions you make in free agency is to release the two offensive tackles that got you there. It made no sense to me. I understand they had to make room for Joe Thuney, top 5, top 3 guard in the league. They just signed Jake Long, I believe, the ex-Bear offensive guard. So they're really stacking up the interior. But what about the tackle position? I mean, you got to look at Patrick Mahomes here. They haven't filled it yet. I can't think of any top tackle out there that they have left. It's basically tier 2, tier 3 tackles left. So you're pretty much looking at the draft to, salvage the 2021 season and keep your quarterback upright. So that was definitely – go ahead, Roland. Yep.
So do you think that the actual the release of those players, do you believe it was because of injuries that were sustained throughout the season and their inability to really protect Mahomes?
No, I think it was more Joe Thuney. You look at the contract he got, I think it was north of $60 million. We praised them, endlessly throughout this past year because they were able to keep Patrick Mahomes. They were able to keep Tyreek Hill. They were able to keep Kelsey. They had Tyrann on the defensive end. They were able to keep these big players on the field in their organization with these contracts. And to bring in a guy like Thuney, you have to release somebody. And it just happened to be the two offensive tackles.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to bring up is, Tampa Bay kept the band together. That was kind of their big question going into the offseason. Levante David is going to be a free agent. Do you bring Rob Gronkowski back? Chris Godwin is a free agent. Just a lot of names on there, and they end up franchising Chris Godwin. And I'm giving Shaquille Barrett a big mega deal, 4 years, $68 million to go rush the passer. So they got to keep him. Extended Levante David, 2 years, $25 million. They're bringing back Gronkowski on a 1 year, $10 million deal. Boy, I mean, that was a lot of the big question. Was Tampa Bay going to be able to keep their Super Bowl roster together? Not much is changing. So that's still a team we're going to have to, have our eye on again. They very well could, repeat.
So with that in mind, Jeremy, even though they solidify a lot of those core players, do you believe that they need to go out and get a couple more pieces to make sure that they can still be in the hunt for the Super Bowl this upcoming season?
Well, Tom Brady did take a restructuring of his contract. That's what freed up a lot of money to keep some of these players around. That there are some role players, that they've got to consider whether they want to bring back. Leonard Fournette is a free agent. He had a very good playoff run for them. Maybe he's the guy they entertain bringing back. But they still have Ronald Jones in that backfield. So, I mean, that's a question mark there. Nakatama Sue is a free agent on the defensive line. And there were some backup defensive linemen like Steve McClendon and whatnot. So they've got to retool a little bit, but I don't think they have to go out and hit any more home runs. Their big home runs were keeping, their franchise guys in house. And even Mike Evans said that he would restructure, to keep this bunch together. One thing I really, I think is really cool about Tampa Bay is they're prioritizing winning. key guys aren't coming out and say, "Oh, I want all the money. I want all the money." Tom Brady is going to be making money well until he's 70 with endorsement deals. He doesn't need to make it on the field. I mean, he's one guy that can probably free up money every year, and he was known for doing that in New England too. So, and then when you have another big time guy like Mike Evans come out and say that, my guess is for as long as Tom Brady wants to stay playing, Tampa Bay is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, I tell you, one of the biggest free agency deals that took place that I'm slightly shocked about, but kudos to the young man, right? Well, I say young man, he's 33, and that is San Francisco's offensive tackle Trent Williams. I mean, you're looking at a 6-year deal worth $138 million. I mean, it is literally the highest. He's the highest paid offensive tackle in the league. Actually, the highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL, and it's a record-breaking deal. He's 33 years old. So with a 6-year deal that'll take him out to 39, this is probably going to be his last contract that he's going to get in the NFL unless something weird really transpires. They're also guaranteeing $55 million. I mean, this is a mega deal for an offensive lineman. And I'm curious, do you guys have any perspective on this? Is it worth putting that much value on an offensive lineman?
Well, I'll say kudos to San Fran for being able to keep Trent Williams there. There are a lot of teams after him. Kansas City was a team that reached out to him, and the 49ers, got him to stick around. So, I mean, that's a big deal. One humorous thing about all this is you said it's the biggest offensive lineman deal in the history of the NFL. He is now getting paid $0.01 million more than last year's record-breaking offensive lineman deal, David Bakhtiari. And David Bakhtiari had a little tweet at Trent Williams' expense, which was a little humorous, saying, "Congrats on the mega deal." But, I mean, Trent Williams is probably the top left tackle in the league, and he played like it last year too. As a guy coming off of not really playing much in 2018, he's definitely worth that type of money if you have it. Now, I mean, honestly, I might have went and gone to Kansas City, might have had a chance to win more there, but that tells you how much he believes in the 49ers, that they're not far off. One injury plagued year, they look like a bottom tier team, but they're a team to watch out in San Fran.
Yeah, I couldn't be happy. I couldn't be more happy for Trent Williams. I mean, when I saw the deal, I kind of thought about, the time with the Washington football team, now formerly the Redskins, where he had that, he had that mistrust with the GM and the trainers. I guess he had a cancer scare, and the doctors were telling him something different, and it was a whole big thing. And he ended up sitting out like 1 or 2 years. And I thought about that, and I couldn't be happy for the guy. He's one of the top 2 tackles in the league. He played like it last year, Jeremy. You said it. He's a great guy. He's dedicated to the game, and I couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned, Jeremy, about him in 2018, last year, he was able to play 14 games in the season, which, was the most he's ever played. So, maybe this is the right deal at the right time for the right type of player. So we'll see what comes of it. Once again, kudos to him. I mean, you're talking about a 33-year-old with a 6-year deal. This is going to be his last contract without a doubt, but he's definitely got a pretty nice payday coming along his way, plus with that $55 million extra. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. I'm your host, Roland, joined with Jeremy and Justice. And we've been talking about, what's going on in the free agency market right now. I mean, it is on fire. There's a lot that is happening. And we're kind of highlighting some of the deals that are catching some attention, some other deals that are just record-breaking. So I'm going to come right back to you, Justice. What is another deal that's out there that kind of has you wondering or scratching your head?
Yeah, another deal that kind of had me look at my phone twice just to check if it was right was the New England Patriots signing Geno Smith, and then the next day signing Hunter Henry. And going back to that kind of two tight end set they had with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez a few years back, it kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. They had just drafted two tight ends the year before. They just traded one of them today. So they're kind of giving up on them already and starting fresh, which I love. You know, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, they're very talented tight ends. But this is going to come down to Cam Newton. You bring in the firepower, Nelson Aguilar, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. You got Sony Michel coming out of the backfield. He has the weapons now. He has no more excuses. He looked god-awful last year. We've said it on the show numerous times. I never thought he'd be back at all this year. I think we all didn't think he'd be back at all. But they brought him back on a heavily incentivized contract. And this is on Cam Newton. You want to be the star. You want to be the player you were before. You have the weapons. You have no more excuses. You got to go out there and show it now.
I'd say another interesting thing that is always interesting to monitor is what pass rushers cashed in big during the offseason. That's always the big news. Who's going to catch that next big-time mega deal rushing the passer? Congratulations, Bud Dupree of the Tennessee Titans now. Got a 5-year, $82.5 million deal. I mean, that's great for him considering he tore his ACL in week 11 of this year. You know, personally, I was expecting that to maybe hinder his value just a little bit. Boy, was I wrong. You know, big record-breaking deal there. Then you've got Trey Hendrickson, who was with the Saints, signed a 4-year, $60 million deal with the Bengals. He's going to have a chance to really kind of help turn that franchise around. Carl Lawson, who was with the Bengals, signed with the New York Jets. Yeah, I knew you'd like that, Justice. 3 years, $45 million. So he cashed in big too. And then another guy, you know, that you didn't mention with the Patriots is they just signed defensive end
Matt Judon.
Matt Judon, thank you. I'm looking at my list here and I can't look on him. But yeah, Matt Judon was a good piece there too, you know, in a year that New England really had trouble rushing the passer. So, I mean, you look at, and then I previously had mentioned Shaquille Barrett, who had cashed in big to stay in Tampa Bay. So, I mean, those are 5 big-time pass rushers that were able to cash in this offseason. It's always worth noting who's going to catch that next mega pass rushing deal. You know, I expect TJ Watt to really reset the market next year when he's a free agent. So, I always love watching these pass rushers and seeing them get paid big-time dollars.
Yeah, you talk about resetting the market. And that's what it really boils down to, right? Is truly, you know, who is resetting the market and how they perform in that upcoming season. One of the deals that I'm slightly taken back, and this one definitely has me scratching my head, and that is the Raiders basically letting go of Nelson Aguilar and him being picked up by the Patriots on a 2-year, $26 million deal. I mean, the guy has not put up in the last 3 years, has not put up any great numbers. Only 55 receptions, 622 yards, and only 5 touchdowns. Is he worth that type of money? There is no way, at least in my pocketbook, if I'm the owner, if I'm the general manager, that I'm paying this guy that type of money. Now, you start talking about the marriage between him, Cam Newton, Justice, you already mentioned them. Going ahead and signing the 2 tight ends, you know, can this work? Can that chemistry and that type of structure really pan itself out? You know, is he going to be a kind of a short distance pass catcher? Is he going to be a deep threat? Is he going to be someone across the middle, you know, and potentially using those tight ends? And of course, Cam is not as elusive as he once was before. In that type of structure, what can he really bring to the table, especially with the productivity that he had with the Raiders over the last 3 years? So what's your guys' take on this guy?
Yeah, I kind of thought the 2-year, $26 million deal was a consequence of pretty much relying on Jacoby Myers to be the number 1 receiver last year. They had no weapons last year. They had no one but N'Keal Harry, who was injured most of the year. Jacoby Myers was their number 1. Edelman was hurt most of the year. They have no weapons right now. Edelman's getting older. He's on his way out. and they had the money to spend. We saw it the first day. They signed at least 4 or 5 guys alone, including Judon, Jonnu Smith, and those big names. So I think it boiled down to they had the money to spend and they needed weapons.
I also think it's interesting. I tend to agree with you, Roland. I think they overpaid here. This NFL draft class is supposed to have, a good amount of talent again at wide receiver. I feel like they overpaid a lot for a guy who really, like you said, has not done a lot. And then they also went out and signed Kendrick Bourne to a deal. The 49ers, he signed a 3-year, $15 million deal. So it's just like you kind of wonder. They spent all this money at the wide receiver position. You would have think they could have got away with just as good of a talent, someone with probably more upside than a Nelson Aguilar at this point in his career. Kendrick Bourne's still a young guy, so he's still got some years left in the league. But I mean, sitting where they are in their first round, they had a good chance of drafting a very good wide receiver. And then just the depth in general in this class just kind of leaves me scratching my head a little bit. Is like, that's who you guys opened the pocketbook for?
Yeah, that one, like I said, with the way they're structuring the offensive, elements of, the tight ends, the receivers, the backfield. It's going to be interesting to see how Belichick pulls this all together, because right now I'm definitely not seeing it. Maybe they might pull off some surprises in the draft, maybe some late signings, but right now, definitely way too much on this guy. Now, there's one topic that's hot out there that I want to jump into, and that is the one and only Cook 'em up Russell Wilson, right? So there is always talk about whether he's going to stay or is he going to leave. What's going to be the deal with this guy? And what I'm curious about is what is going to happen since Pete Carroll has put the kibosh on the big deal that the Chicago Bears put on the table. So, I mean, is that the sign that this guy is not going anywhere? Or is it a sign of, hey, maybe it's just not the right fit for our organization right now? I don't know, guys. I'm opening that one up.
Well, one thing I think is worth noting is, the Bears don't exactly have a high draft pick this year. And, are you really going to take the 20th overall pick for Russell Wilson just to start off the negotiation, because, obviously it's going to take multiple first rounders and players to get a player of Russell Wilson's caliber. I mean, the Bears have always been a good team. So, I mean, you're getting draft picks probably, this year it's in the 20th overall pick. They've always been in the late teens. That's a team that's always found a way to win, being close to 800. So it's not like the Chicago Bears are probably saying, oh, look, here's going to be 3 top 8 picks, for the next 3 years. You never know how that's going to pan out. So, and then what other players were they offering too? I mean, we are obviously never going to know what the exact nature of the deal, what was going to be given up. But I would certainly want more than the 20th overall pick this year for Russell Wilson, because if I'm going to be replacing Russell Wilson, I'm going to be wanting to take one of the top quarterbacks. And I think it's worth noting that Adam Schefter said put money down that there could be 4 quarterbacks on the first 7 picks this year. It's just a big risk for letting an all-pro player like Russell Wilson walk and then not have an answer at quarterback.
Hey, you're absolutely correct. And I think that's something that the Seahawks are probably factoring in to any deals that they will tease out is, what are they going to get? Because whatever they get, it better be big.
Yeah, when this first rift between Russell Wilson and the Seahawks management first came out, I was kind of leaning towards no, he's probably not going to get traded. And I think this recent report about them reportedly declining the 3 first-round picks and two starters, I think that pretty much solidified it right there. Russell Wilson's 31. He's probably got another 8 years left of good football. Quarterbacks tend to last a bit longer. This Russell Wilson's a special quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't see the Seahawks getting better by trading him, unless it's the Miami Dolphins this year and they get the number 3 pick and they take one of those quarterbacks, or possibly Tua in the deal. Outside of the Miami Dolphins, I don't see the value. I don't see them trading Russell Wilson at all. They got DK Metcalf. They got Tyler Lockett. They have pieces on defense. They have a solid team. I just don't see them getting better by trading Russell Wilson, and I just see him staying in Seattle for at least next year at the least.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because here is something that's very inquisitive about Russell's situation. It's not the fact that he's being vocal and he just wants out of Seattle. It's the fact that he wants more say on how they structure the organization. One of the things he's been very vocal about is his offensive line. The guy's been sacked 47 times this past season. The season prior to, he was sacked 48, which was the highest in the NFL. On top of that, and you start getting into the business side of things, is the value going to be there for a trade, in the next couple of years? In 2022, they're due to pay him out 37 million. And in 2023, they're due to pay him 39. So his contract is also getting expensive, with some uncertainty on what the salary cap is going to look like in those years also, right? So I think there's a couple of variables in there from a front office money management standpoint, but also from the guy just wants a solid offensive line, not only that can give him that pass protection, but that can slide with him, because let's be honest, a lot of Seattle's, besides him using his footwork in the pocket, a lot of Seattle's work is him bootlegging out of the pocket. When that happens, you got to have an offensive line that can slide. He doesn't have that, and he didn't have that this past season. That's what resulted in the huge amount of sacks. So I think that's what he's looking for, is more of a voice. Now, what team out there could really utilize him? What team can afford to really put forth the value that he's going to require? I don't know a lot of teams out there that have that type of capital without giving up a lot. There are some folks that are talking that maybe the Carolina Panthers might be one of those teams that might be a good fit for him. Potentially. I don't necessarily know, but I think this is something for us to keep our eye on. But in my humble opinion, Russell Wilson is going to be right there in Seattle. He got serious wide receiver threats. He has a young Freddie Swain that's coming up within that slot position. They got a great defense. They definitely had to put some pieces together towards the end of last year. So I think they will be in the hunt again, but you got to give the guy time to throw the ball. Now, this last one I want to throw out before we wrap up here today. I want your guys' perspective on quarterback comparisons and value. So we got Andy Dalton, who is now in Chicago. 1-year deal worth $10 million, couple of incentives in there. And then you look at how he played with Dallas and what he was not able to accomplish with all the talent that he had around him. Yep, he eventually got hurt. However, even when he was healthy, he was not able to put it together. There was a sense of a lack of leadership on that team when he was on the field. Now, you got Cam Newton. He resigns with the Patriots, 1-year deal. Technically, that is no more than a $5 million deal. About $8 million are tied up in incentives. When you look at Cam's capability and the capability of a guy like Dalton, does the contracts meet their capabilities? What's your thoughts?
My answer is no. The contracts don't really match their production. That's obvious. But, like you said, Roland, the quarterback position is the most important position. It's the most valued position. And that's why we see these players getting overpaid. I think about Mike Glennon right before they drafted Mitchell Trubisky. He got like 3 years, $28 million. And what did he do the year before that? He was probably on the bench somewhere. He did nothing, and he got a big contract to come in for the Bears. I think about Matt Flynn before they drafted Russell Wilson. He was brought in to take the team, to lead the team. He got a sizable contract, but he was nothing but a backup back then. So we're always going to see this. We're always going to see this overpaying of quarterbacks. Teams need it the most. We saw it with Teddy Bridgewater last year. Kind of, he did okay, but he got a bigger contract than he deserved, I think. So we're always going to see this type of overpayment with quarterbacks, edge rushers. Bud Dupree, he got a big contract. We're always going to see these type of things with these premier positions. So it's just the way the NFL is.
I tend to agree. I think you look at both of these deals and say this is the quarterback floor across the NFL. If when you are paying for a stopgap quarterback, you are only going to be spending about $8 to $13 million a year. You said Cam Newton's deal is only worth 8. Andy Dalton's is only worth 10. We didn't talk about earlier. Ryan Fitzpatrick signed a 1-year, $10 million deal to go get a chance to start for Washington this year. Another team that's, in a stopgap situation. These guys are not the guys for the future, but they do have to pay someone to show up and play quarterback for them. The Trubisky experiment is over. He's signed with Buffalo earlier in the week, to back up Josh Allen. At some point, you've got to stick your money somewhere. I think it's more of just a reflection of, New England kind of knows what they're getting with Cam Newton. Maybe, what you're getting with Andy Dalton. Don't get me wrong there. But $10 million at the end of the day for your starting quarterback is chump change. $8 million is chump change. So at the end of the day, yeah, those guys are worth that, considering the floor across the league, is in that range when you're just going to pay a guy to be there for a year at most.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here on the Extra Point on ESPN Denver 1600. We've been talking about the free agency frenzy that is taking place right now, and there's a lot that's going on. So please stay tuned here to the Extra Point week in and week out as we make our journey towards the draft, and we'll see where all these free agencies going to take a lot of these teams in the upcoming season. For myself, for Justice and Jeremy, I wish everyone a great, safe weekend. We will see you here next week on The Extra Point.